There's something I've noticed over my career. You can work in the same office with the same people every day and still feel like you really don't know them. Or worse, like they really don't know you. We don't talk about that much. But here the research is clear. When people feel like they belong at work, burnout drops, performance improves, even sick days go down. Which raises a different kind of question, not how do we make doctors more resilient, but what kind of system are we working in if people don't feel like they belong in the first place? Today, I am so happy to be joined by Dr. Sofya Asfaw. She's a trauma and critical care surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic and serves in leadership roles focused on safety, quality, and patient experience. But what stood out to me when I heard her speak recently wasn't just her clinical work or her leadership roles. It's her focus on something I've not heard talked about much in medicine, and that's the concept of belonging. Turns out that feeling supported, connected, and seen at work isn't just a nice to have, but it actually sharpens performance and helps people sustain themselves in this profession. Sophia, thank you for coming and welcome to Heal the Burn.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into the deep stuff, I would love to hear a little bit about you and your journey. What drew you to a career in medicine?
That's a great question. I have the fortunate privilege of having close family members in medicine. My father is in medicine, and seeing what he did as I grew up, seeing how he helped people, seeing as how he had a purpose, he had a calling, really drew me to the field and increased my desire to kind of mirror what I saw in him and mirror his connection to the profession. And as I think about the profession, I really think, my goodness, some days I'm walking the halls in the hospital and I'm like, what a blessing, what a privilege it is
Mm,
to be able to do this, to
mhm.
care for people in their time of need. In my profession in particular, I sometimes don't see people when they're at their best. I see people when they're not at their best and when their
Yeah.
families are not at their best. And that's the nature of trauma, critical care, and emergency surgery. But I also, I always think just what an incredible blessing it is to have hopefully some knowledge and skill and compassion to really take care of your fellow man and woman in times of need.
Have you always felt that way about medicine?
That's also a great question. And I think our relationship with medicine, or might not just necessarily say mine, but I would venture to say maybe if I feel this way, some people do too, it waxes and wanes. Not every day is a good day in healthcare. Not every day you felt like you made a difference. Some
Mhm.
days, and I'm going to be honest, I feel like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Was this the right choice? And definitely self-doubt creeps in sometimes. So no, it's not always perfect in medicine. No, not every day is a good day in medicine too, but I tend to hope and feel and think that as long as there are more good days than bad days, and perhaps overwhelmingly more good days than bad days, then it's sustainable.
Thanks. When did you first become interested specifically in trauma and critical care and emergency surgery?
So in in medicine, we tend to be in healthcare decisive. We have to make decisions on people and we have to make them quickly. Well, when I was in medical school and training, I was rather indecisive, actually. I will say, going into medical school and since I was young, I always did have a connection to surgery. I did feel like I liked surgery and that I wanted to go into a surgical discipline. I did think cardiothoracic surgery might be something that I was interested in following in my father's footsteps. But then that evolved. And when I went to medical school, I liked a lot of things. I liked surgery. I liked psychiatry. I liked family medicine. To a certain extent, I liked internal medicine, but maybe quite not as much as a lot of the other things. And it was hard to decide, but I
Yeah.
decided on general surgery and training because I actually thought, despite not having as quite as deep a connection to internal medicine, general surgeons to me were surgeons that could do a lot of different things, and they were basically internists who operated. And I am a one that also likes to see the fruits of their labor, and that is in surgery. And what I mean by indecision too, when I was going through my training was back and forth. Oh, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? And you know how you find your people. You have a group where you
Hmm.
feel like you connect, you belong. And for me, that group were intensivists and our trauma surgeons. And I just felt like that was a group that I connected with. And that ultimately guided my career choice.
Hmm.
The additional thing, which I was talking about indecision, is to me, the field of acute care surgery is one where you can be indecisive because I get to do trauma surgery one day, I get to do critical care another day, I get to do emergency general surgery another day or a week, so that I didn't have to choose. And in trauma surgery, I get to operate everywhere on the body. So if I needed to, I, would have to operate on the neck and the vessels in the neck if somebody had a trauma that required very quick and fast thinking and operative skills. I would have to operate in the chest, the belly, the legs, wherever it would be. And to a certain extent, for general surgery, that too. So I didn't have to make a decision on
Hmm.
where I would operate. And then I like the cerebral aspect of the critical care too. And not saying that trauma surgery and emergency general surgery are not cerebral. They are. They are very cerebral careers, but I really like the physiology of that, and I liked taking care of a lot of people's patients, and when the patients were at their worst, either bringing them to recovery or helping them if it was inevitable that we had done all that we could as a medical team and that the patient's outcome would not be survivable, or the patient wanted to focus on comfort or quality, that I would help them through that phase and their family through that phase of care to have the best outcome possible for a great remaining quality of life. So that is a very long-winded answer to why I I arrived at trauma critical care and emergency general surgery.
I really do appreciate the background. It's so interesting to find out how we got to where we got. It reminded me when I was in third year medical school, when you start doing the rotations outside of school, I'd come home and I'd tell my wife, "Oh my, I'm going to be a cardiologist," and the next day I'm going to be a brain surgeon, and the next day. So you settled on trauma surgery, and I settled on internal medicine. I think we both turned out okay. So I had the opportunity to hear you speak at a conference. It was in March, and I was really moved by your talk about this concept of belonging. And I'm wondering how you started ever to think about that, become interested in that.
I think that belonging, feeling included, has always been something that has been important to me. As someone that is traditionally underrepresented in medicine, and in healthcare, there are a lot of different aspects to providing care for patients and the mental acuity and fortitude to do so. So when I think about belonging, it's important for me as someone that belongs to one of those traditionally marginalized groups, to feel important and supported, to be able to deliver the best care that I can possible to my patients without some of that extra doubt and self-doubt creeping in and feeling like I don't belong. And then also to make our patients feel like they belong in a certain office or a certain practice or in the operating room and feel like their needs are heard and met. So, it's always been something that has been important to me, and also important for me to see in others. You never want to see somebody struggle. You want to see your colleagues, your patients, your family, your friends struggle. And if we can emphasize that belonging, and if I can take an extra step to make sure that my colleagues, patients, family, friends feel like they belong and are part of something, to me, that's worth everything.
When you had finished training, you're and attending, you're working and thinking about belonging in both that very sort of deep existential lifelong experience that you had with belonging, when did you start to see what that looks like in the office with your colleagues?
So I think the first thing is it it starts from the beginning. I mentioned before that part of the reason why I chose my particular discipline was because of a sense of belonging to a particular group of people. So it started very early when I even chose what I was going to specialize in. And then next it started, or it continued with, well, where am I going to practice? Do I feel a sense of belonging to a group where I practice? And I think you mentioned at the start of this, we're coming into the office and you're talking to people you've been working with them for 20 years maybe, but you really don't know who they are, and
Yeah,
maybe you're not a group that belongs together. And for me, it was really important to choose a place, a practice where I got that sense in the beginning where I felt like I would belong. Now, you never know if you're going to belong somewhere until you actually try it out, but it's also a continual process for me in safety quality experience. A lot of our work and our process change is based on continuous improvement, and for me, belonging is just that as well. So at every stage, at different stages of my career, what an early career, do I still feel like I belong at this organization? Am I appreciated? Am I valued? Do I feel part of this group, my immediate group, and then the larger group in an organization? I think is important. And as you grow in another stage of your career and you grow in different areas of life, it's a continual kind of check and balance and check in, a feeling of belonging. So I think it started early, but it continues every day and in every phase of a career.
that's great. So you mentioned something about the patient experience quality and safety. What do you love about that work?
I like that it's directly related to patient outcomes. I like that it infiltrates all aspects of healthcare as well. So it's patient centered, it's provider centered, it's also, in addition to outcomes, we influence in quality, safety, and experience operations. We influence financial stability and longevity of an organization as well. We influence how our patients experience our care. Quality and safety to me also feeds into organizational representation as well. Because if you can't speak to, your outcomes and your metrics and show sustained and continued best practice and performance, then you won't be able to serve as many people. potentially as you'd like to. So for
Mhm.
me, I like it because it infiltrates all aspects of healthcare, not just what you would traditionally think as quality, safety, and experience.
That's great. Getting back to belonging as a concept, what does belonging look like day to day in medicine?
It might look different to different people. To me, what it feels like, or what it looks like to me, is to feel included, accepted, valued, and appreciated, and really part of something, part of a group, part of a whole, part of a nucleus that's moving something together. That's really what it feels like for me. What it looks like is when I do come to work every day and I'm sitting in that office with people that I actually do know them. I know who they are inside the office, but I know who they are also outside of the office. I can really understand their core, their values, and what drives them, and make sure that we align in that too. And if we don't align, that we understand and respect each other so we can all feel valued. So to me, it also gets to the core of what you started when you're talking. You walk into the office, and who are these people you worked with for 20 years? And to me, in an organization where you belong, you know these people, and you feel connected to them. And you feel connected to them in those days where we're having just the best day in healthcare. And you also feel connected and supported in those days where you don't feel that way. And to me, that really does speak to a lot of what belonging is.
And what impact does that have on people?
I think it has a tremendous impact. Belonging improves safety. It improves safety and recording, and kind of reporting, going back to this quality sense. When you believe that you are psychologically safe in an environment, you can actually improve your reporting, improve your outcomes when you feel like you belong, versus those that don't. You may not achieve a goal that, say, a high reliability organization likes to aspire to. We
Mhm.
know that when you belong, your job performance increases, and that was some examples. We know that when you belong, you're less likely to leave an organization. We know that when you belong, you tend to get more raises, which may or may not make you feel more like you belong and stay in an organization. But people that feel like they belong to an organization are really dedicated to it.
Mm.
They get promoted more. As you
Mhm.
mentioned, there's less sick days. We just perform better. And I think we're happier in what we do.
What do you think makes somebody feel like they belong?
I think it's the sense that you get, and different people may feel what belonging differently. I
Right.
think when people feel valued, it helps them to feel that they belong. I think when people feel like they are part of a group that generally, it doesn't have to be every single point, but aligns around a similar set of values, moving a cause forward. To me, that's belonging too. And that's how I feel that I belong, when my value system generally aligns with and without, in terms of context of an organization, with people in an organization, with the organization's mission, vision, and values as a whole too. And additionally, not only that you feel your values align, but you actually feel valued and appreciated in an organization and included. To me, that's how you feel belonging.
Mhm. Do you think there's something about healthcare in particular that makes it harder to belong than it should be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think that in healthcare, trust is important. And I think that it it's hard sometimes in healthcare. If we take a step back and we think about the kind of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and first are physiologic needs. And if we think about healthcare, okay, we get food, water, shelter, warmth, rest, healthcare, fine. I think in the next there's safety and then there's belonging. I think in healthcare, some of the challenge of belonging comes in not necessarily feeling safe sometimes or protected from harm. In healthcare, we're human and we know to err is human. And if we don't have a system in place, and this is getting a little bit more into the quality safety, to make sure that our healthcare provider ecosystem is, say, protected from harm when we have errors, or when we have, not the greatest day or something like that, then we don't feel safe. And if we don't feel safe, we can't build on that level, that next level of belonging or love and belonging in
Hmm.
Maslow's hierarchy. So in healthcare, I think we're prime, or we're at risk for not feeling like we belong, because that building block of safety, which a lot of organizations are trying to make foundational.
One of the things I've discovered about the concept of burnout is that it's not necessarily that you have it or you don't have it. It can certainly come and go. It can be a few days. It becomes a problem when it's persistent. But would you think the sense of one's belonging kind of follows a similar path?
Yes. I mean, it does. I think there are arcs of belonging too, just like there are arcs of burnouts. We all change and evolve as humans. We're not the same as we were when we came into this world, and a life event, something, or aging, or just the pathway of life changes,
Hmm.
might change who we are as an individual. Potentially our values will stay the same, or maybe they won't. And as we evolve and change as individuals, and as we evolve in healthcare too, there is that natural ebb and flow, and burnout will follow that natural ebb and flow, and belonging certainly will as well.
Do you think there are things that unintentionally make people feel invisible at work?
Yeah, I think that when people don't feel included, and belonging is like the active action of
Hmm.
inclusion, too, that they people feel invisible. I also think people may feel invisible or less valued, so to speak, when we don't recognize and appreciate them. Sometimes something so small as thank you can mean so much and go a long way. I think that it's also not just recognizing actions and, successes and contributions of people, but it's also recognizing when somebody's not at their best. Maybe they're having not the best day, and everyone can sense it, but no one, just takes that extra compassionate step to ask, you know, what they can do for that person, to me, and asks in an inviting voice, or asks, kind of, what's bothering you? How can I make it better? That, to me, then in those situations as well, people feel invisible, like they don't belong. Like if we're not asking questions and appreciating what people say too. So, I think those are contexts where belonging erodes and where invisibility may prevail.
And do you think that's something that an individual needs to be responsible for or direct, or is this something that should be coming from our leaders?
I think it's all of the above. When you're speaking in the context of an organization, if we all belong to an organization and we are really trying to move the mission of that organization forward, it's everyone's responsibility. So it is top down and it is bottom up too. Our leaders sometimes may not be as connected with the day to day, but when you walk into that office door with your colleagues of 20 years, or 5 years or 5 minutes. It is, also our responsibility to check in with them and ask how, how can I make it better? What's bothering you? What are we missing? Things like that. So I think it's bi-directional. I think it absolutely has to be grassroots at the level of colleagues or anyone, and also in terms of leadership.
And then as an individual, if you aren't necessarily feeling the most included, uh, how might you start a path to untangle why that is? How might you get yourself a, a little bit of a self invitation to be included in a work scenario?
I think um, sometimes it's hard. Some people are not as extroverted, some people are more introverted. But there are things like employee resource groups that you could join with other like-minded individuals or around like-minded subjects to start to show engagement and and then in turn feel more belonging too. So there are small steps you can take. Saying hi to someone in the hall is a small step toward maybe you starting to feel included, but also them as well, like they belong. So it's just you can start with small steps, small things too.
Mhm. Are there any specific examples that you remember along the way where you felt like you were helping take the reins of becoming part of the group?
Some Something that I try to do, and maybe it's not take the reins of becoming a part of a group, but I do try to speak with people. I do try to check in. I do try to do engagement rounds and ask people how they are doing, and ask everybody how they're doing so that we can all feel included. And maybe that's not necessarily taking the reins, but it's just somebody doing a small part of something to make everyone in the group feel like they are part of something and like they are included. And and to me that's important, and it's important for everything and everyone in healthcare too. I think, and maybe I'll digress a little bit here too. Sometimes we spend a lot of times in our own groups, in our own sections. So physicians may talk to physicians, and or other providers, and really forget that healthcare is an entire ecosystem. So for me, it's important in making everyone feel like they belong, me included, and talking to everyone in that ecosystem. So perhaps when I am rounding in the ICU, I might touch base with our environmental service team and ask them what observations they have had, and hi, how are you doing? So I feel a part of what they're doing too, and the team, or our technicians that are in and out, of our patients' rooms too, our nurses, everyone just checking in so everyone feels, almost a part of everyone's group and that they belong. So I think that's important also, not to be siloed in like-minded groups, but really to touch base with everyone.
Can you share a little bit about how that makes you feel?
It makes me feel good to know different people on different levels, and it actually makes me feel good when I'm walking down the hall in the hospital and anyone can say hi to me and not feel like they are, I don't know why anyone ever would feel afraid to say
Mhm.
hi to me or anything like that. And, everybody. So that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I belong to part of so many different groups, and then in turn a larger part of the organization. And in fact, I think it's one of my very favorite things to walk down the hall of the hospital and have people know your name, say hi.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what they do in the
Right.
hospital, in and out, and just that they know you as a person and that they can feel comfortable enough, like they belong to say hi and you know what's up and all of that.
If someone's listening who is feeling that they aren't belonging, what would be some of your first advice to that person?
I would say first, let's think about why. Why don't you feel like you belong? Is it because perhaps the values that you hold dear internally do not align with whatever your place of work, healthcare, wherever that it is? And is it because of that value misalignment that you may feel you don't belong? Is it because you've done so much for an organization, a section, a hospital in your job, and you're just not feeling appreciated, very underappreciated for the tremendous contributions that you've given, and you're thinking, maybe that's why I don't belong. Is it because nobody's checked in and
Mhm.
nobody's said hi and
Mhm.
nobody is inviting and welcoming and making us feel like we belong? Or could it be that we as an individual also may not be as inviting ourselves and may not have taken opportunities to socialize or group or collect or spend time or get to know people a little bit better? So I would assess that and say, it's a two-way street. Also, is there something that I can do to also potentially help feel like I belong more as well, and also help another individual feel that way? Or is it, something more systemic where we have values that aren't aligning with the organization that we're a part of? So I would kind of do an introspective deep dive, and then one that's more focused on outside and factors relating to the organization.
Yeah. I really find value in walking around and saying hello to my colleagues, hello to my staff, hello to the front people, checking in, even if there's nothing to say, just hello. It makes me feel connected. I see a smile on their face. That feels really good.
It feels good for you, but it also feels good to them. You're a leader, you are a physician, and imagine the impact that you are having on people just by saying hello. And some might think, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that he knew my name or that I existed or something like that. How you can really just even brighten someone's day by just acknowledging their presence. It's costless, but it's priceless. So it doesn't cost a thing, but what it can do for someone and to cultivate that sense of belonging is really unmatched.
I would also underscore that it makes me feel good to see that too, when I'm walking around and building that with people every day. Sophia, this has been such a great conversation. I am so appreciative for your time and respect so much about you, and want to thank you for sharing your time with me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. This has been wonderful.
I started this conversation thinking about how easy it is to feel disconnected at work, even when you're around the same people every day. But what I'm leaving with is the idea that belonging isn't something we need to wait for. It is something that we can create ourselves in systems that make people feel safe, in leadership that makes people feel valued, and in the small everyday choices we make to acknowledge each other. Those moments add up, and they matter more than we may think. It feels good to the person you're connecting with, and it feels good to us because of the connection. If you found this episode compelling, please share it with a colleague. This is Dr. Stephen Sears, and thank you for listening to another episode of Heal the Burn.